born in a little city called Kira. That's why he referred to me as Judas Iscariot. And that was to distinguish me from the other disciple by the name of Judas as well. Now you know why I'm referred to as Judas Iscariot. Now you probably think you know me, don't you? You've already judged me even before I speak every single word. You can't even speak my name without making it sound real devilish and evil. Your artists, they make me look like the devil himself. But really, what do you really know about me? Do you tell me? I mean, apart from the fact that I betrayed Jesus, do you know Judas at all? Let me tell you. Tell you a little bit more about me, okay? It may do you some good to learn a little bit more than just that one single item. And you might discover that I was not a whole lot different from maybe all of you. That's right. You would never ever think you would betray Jesus. Listen. Now don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to justify what I did. No, I've been judged and condemned by a greater judge than any of you. I'm not crying foul because I'm not asking for a retrial. I just think you ought to understand that if it weren't by the grace of God, you could become another modern-day Judas and end up like me. Now, you may not want to name your children after me. I understand that. But I can assure you the name Judas was a very common, very popular, and very honorable name for a lot of years. As respectable as any of the names like Peter or James or John or any of the others the disciples went by. Judas was just another form of Judah, the tribe from which Jesus came, believe it or not. And one of Jesus' ancestors was named Judas. Do you know that? One of the greatest folk heroes of our time, Judas Maccabees. Ah, yes, you remember him? Maybe not. But his exploits are written down so you can read them even to this very day. It's why we celebrate every year the festival of Hanukkah. Yeah. Because of what Judas Maccabees did in cleansing the temple and rededicating it to the worship of the true God. I don't understand how one single act could be my betrayal of this Jesus could damage such an honorable name like Judas. Now, do you think I was always a traitor? Do you think I joined the disciples and followed Jesus for 3 years, full well knowing I would become the traitor? Now, think about it for a minute. I followed him for 3 years. More closely than perhaps most of you are following the Lord now. I was doing it 24/7 for 3 years. Anybody match up to that? I didn't start out with the intention of betraying him, by no means. But I suppose you're probably wondering what really motives and moved me to become the disciple that ended up betraying Jesus. Well, you know, when I analyze my motives, I still am not really understanding what and why things happened the way they did. I mean, let's face it, have you ever tried to analyze your own motives? I mean, you might be really embarrassed when you start looking at why you do some of the things you do in life, you know? I mean, do you think everybody that follows the call to follow Jesus does so with pure 100% motives? Come on. I wasn't born yesterday, and neither were you. I mean, take James and John, two of Jesus' special disciples, right? I mean, they wanted positions of power and authority when Jesus comes in his kingdom. They even hoodwinked their mom into cornering Jesus and asking specifically that her two boys, one would sit on either side of Jesus' throne. Come on. They were following Jesus with pure, 100% pure motives? Yeah, right. And the other disciples? They weren't any better. When they heard what James and John had asked for, they all wanted the things they wanted themselves. We should have thought of it first, they thought. Yeah, right. Pure motives? Yeah. I don't think so. Well, whatever their motives or mine, we all heard the Lord say, if any man would come after me, let him deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me. We did that. All 12 of us. It wasn't going to be easy, and we knew it. And yet we did forsake everything. We left family and jobs and livelihoods and everything to walk around the dusty streets of Judea and every place else with Jesus for 3 years. How dare you judge me when you maybe haven't given it as much? I was one of those select circle of the apostles. The group handpicked by Jesus. In fact, I was elected treasurer of the group, okay? They must have trusted me, or they wouldn't have let me handle their money. It wasn't all that much, but still. I mean, even after I made secret deal with the chief priest, they still trusted me. They never thought it would be me that would betray Jesus. You heard the story, right? So when Jesus announced that one of us would betray him, they all were shocked. We're all asking, is it I? Is it I? Is it I? Is it me? Is it what? Yeah. And when I asked, Jesus said, yes. It's you, Judas. You see, Jesus had accepted me too as one of the 12. And in that capacity, I served him faithfully as well as the others. And Jesus loved me too, even when he knew that I had already turned my back on him to betray him. Don't get the idea that just because Jesus said, one of you is devilish, is somehow prophetic reference to me. I mean, Jesus still loved me, okay? I wasn't all bad. Jesus had just as harsh a criticism for Peter, whom he called Satan to his own face. You see, both instances were acts of love. Warnings, if you will. As loving as the tears he shed over the city of Jerusalem, who also had rejected him in categorical kind of ways. So you ask, how did I become so disloyal that I would even contemplate betraying Jesus to his enemies? Well, as I said before, I didn't start out with that intention in mind. And I didn't get the idea all of a sudden either. It was a kind of gradual development, one thing leading to another. And I'm telling you this so that you can see how easily it could happen to any of you as Messiah Jesus was going to be. Well, I knew the Messiah would be a liberator, one who would set his people free. But you see, I was thinking about terms of a political Messiah, that would rid us of the Romans and set up a Jewish state. Freedom, well-being for our Jews. And I wasn't alone in this misconception by a long shot. The others in our group felt pretty much the same way, with the possible exception of Matthew. Okay, Matthew, you remember, was a tax collector, so he favored working with the Romans. Don't rock the boat. Make peace with the Romans. We don't like it, but make the best of a bad situation was his attitude. So there was pretty much tension in our group. Matthew, of course, favored working with the Romans. While Simon the Zealot, another disciple, he wanted them all dead now, okay? They were diametrical opposites of each other. And as a result, we had some pretty heated debates on the road as we traveled from one location to another, especially when we thought Jesus wasn't listening. Oh, yeah. You have to understand that nearly all of my people had come to think that the promised Messiah was one who would reestablish the freedom and independent kingdom of the Jewish state. This idea dates back to 500 years when the returnees came back from the Babylonian captivity. All they could think about was freedom and the return to their homeland. And one day the Messiah would come and all of this would be wonderful. Well, anyway, as it became more and more apparent that Jesus had no political aspirations or objectives, I guess I began to lose interest in him. If only I had read the Old Testament scriptures more carefully, especially the prophet Isaiah, I would not have had this glorified view of the Messiah. I would have known that suffering servant idiom of Isaiah. Oh, but my own wishful thinking, right? Besides, I felt like an outsider for most of the time amongst the disciples. All of them came from the northern province of Galilee. I was from the south, down by Kirov, opposite where they had grown up. The others used to tease me about my accent, and I guess I secretly resented it. Nevertheless, I was accepted by them, I guarantee you. They did not make me treasurer of the group, which says something, does it not? John said that I was a thief and that I was greedy. Oh, well, he could have been a little more charitable in his judgment. I mean, if he had known my responsibilities, for crying out loud, a lot he knew about finances. All they were fishermen, okay? And not real good at it anyway, because all you do is hear about them having to mend their nets every single day. What's that about? I at least knew and understood the value of money, okay? If I took anything from the common treasury, it was only to compensate me for expenses in lieu of a salary, which of course I didn't get. Once the others stood around and watched approvingly while Mary of Bethany wasted a whole pound of expensive perfume on the feet of Jesus. I pointed out that it could well have been used in a much more expeditious kind of way, the perfume sold and the money given to the poor. It really hurt my feelings when Jesus said, defending Mary's wasteful actions, that this was proper under the circumstances. It also annoyed me that Jesus gave preferential treatment to a few of his apostles. And maybe I was jealous that I wasn't part of that select group. Especially that big windbag braggart by the name of Simon Peter. His two fishing buddies, James and John. Was I jealous? Yeah, probably so. But, I'm human. These are just some of the things that led up to the night when I secretly approached Jesus' enemies and offered to tell them where they could find Jesus, away from the crowds, away from any mob action or whatever. As you know, they gave me 30 pieces of silver. I probably could have gotten a whole lot more. It was only worth $8,000 in your currency today. I mean, for the information of where this Nazarene would be. And they said I would have to go along to make sure they got the right guy. I just want to take the money to run, to tell you the truth. But I don't remember exactly what I had planned to do with the money. First, I really wasn't sure I was even going to go through with it, let alone spend the money. I was with Jesus and the others in the upper room. We just got done celebrating the Passover festival together. I have to admit, it was the most miserable Passover I've ever celebrated in my life. And I suspected that Jesus knew exactly what was in my heart and mind at that time. But when he quietly informed me that he did know, and then told me to hurry up and get it over with, I couldn't stand it any longer. I rushed out of that upper room into the darkness of the night that matched at least the gloom of my soul. And it was already late by this time, so contacting the priest, they were there, no problem. But when I told them that I knew where Jesus would be going, Caiaphas immediately dispatched the posse to go to the Garden of Gethsemane with authority to arrest this Jesus and bring him back to the high priest's house. I had to go along. Make certain they came back with the right guy. Now you'll understand, I'm sure, if I don't dwell on the events of the garden. They're very painful for me. That's one of those brief moments in one's life which you could change or would change if you had the power to do so. And you probably all know all about it anyway. Suffice it to say at this point, there was only bitterness in my heart at this point when I walked up and identified Jesus to his enemies. Jesus spoke gently to me there in the garden. It would have been so much easier to hear him yell and scream or holler at me or even strike me. Would have made better sense. I tried the best I could to avoid any eye contact with him. And as soon as my part of the deal was over, I left immediately. You know, even then, I didn't fully realize the seriousness of my betrayal. If Jesus had come to Jerusalem to be arrested and to be put to death, as he had already told us several times before, then what difference did it make who actually betrayed him? I mean, if not I, somebody would have had to, right? Of course, now I know, though it probably made no difference to Jesus who it was betraying him. It made all the difference to me. Yeah. See, now I had officially turned my back on Jesus. Once and for all. All the hopes that I had built up over those 3 years of following him, now were gone. At the time, I didn't really think about it, but I may have felt that Jesus could well have escaped at any time if he wanted to. I mean, he had demonstrated power on so many other occasions, so many times, so many places, that he could have snapped his fingers and been free of all those arresting him. Besides all that, I really underestimated the chief priests, exactly. I didn't see how they could actually sentence him to death. For I knew that Jesus had done none of those things they wanted to charge him of. Nothing wrong. He'd done everything well. I'm sure there was no reason to put Jesus to death. However, when I saw that Jesus was quickly condemned by the Sanhedrin and was led off to the court of Pilate the following morning for sentencing, I tried to do what I had done. I offered to return the 30 pieces of silver if they just would let Jesus go free. But they wouldn't even listen to me. myself. At that point I felt I reached a point of no return. So in despair, went out and I ended my life. That's my pathetic story. Now, which of you can honestly say that you haven't more than once set foot on that same path that leads away from Christ? Whether it's one step or 2 steps or a mile of steps, doesn't really matter. You're on the same path as I was. Leading to one's destruction. You see, you and I are really not that much different. A little ignorance of Scripture over here about Christ's real kingdom. A little disappointment in Him not doing what I wanted Him to do. A little too much love for the good life. A little envy, a little jealousy. A bit of unjustifiable anger. And guess what? You are well down the same road to becoming another traitor. Just like me. Think about it. It can happen. Seriously.